Chapter 539, Humanoid Fish. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. The battle between the Half-Saint class warship and the Half-Saint Evil Corpse lasted about 4 hours. The attacks of the Half-Saint class warship had badly damaged the Half-Saint Evil Corpse. The corpse had been battered by the Fire Dragon formation and Holy Light Grand Cannon. Cracks had appeared, and it looked like it would fall apart any time. What? The Half-Saint Evil Corpse made a strange sound and then suddenly dove into the water, going under the bottom of the Half-Saint class warship. The Half-Saint light inside the corpse quickly absorbed the heaven and earth spiritual chi and emptied all the spiritual chi within a 100-mile radius. These were converted into Saint power that slowly lifted the Half-Saint class warship. On the warship, the soldiers of Primitive World sensed that they were rising gradually to the sky, getting closer and closer to clouds. A female soldier of Primitive World turned pale, her legs shaking. She said in dismay, What's going on?" Half-Saint class warships were able to fly vertically using an array. However, everyone knew that this Half-Saint class warship had already consumed a large number of spiritual crystals. How would it run the flying array without enough spiritual chi? It had to be an external force lifting the warship up. Zhang Yuochen immediately summoned the ancient abyss sword. He held the hilt with one hand and plunged it down on the dark steel armor of the deck, embedding 17 centimeters of the sword tip inside. He held on to the hilt and stabilized his body. Underneath them, the Half-Saint Evil Corpse pushed out its arms and threw the Half-Saint class warship. The warship quickly flipped in the air. With a boom, it hit the rocky island before rolling and falling back into the sea. Rumble. The warship began sinking and seawater poured in, squeezing the light screen formed by the vessel defending formation. In the third-floor cabin, a wrinkled array master immediately sent a sound transmission to Situ Fenglen, saying, "Your Excellency, the first set of vessel defending formation has been destroyed by the evil corpse. The second set is also severely damaged. What should we do now?" Situ Fenglen looked somber, but he remained calm as he said, "That Half-Saint Evil Corpse is also severely damaged. Put all of the spiritual crystals into the Holy Light Grand Cannon and attack." The Holy Light Grand Cannon was a war weapon that was also forged and refined by the Divine Work Ministry. It only needed spiritual crystals of light nature and it could launch an attack that was comparable to a Half-Saint class attack. Of course, this forbidden weapon could only be used in the battlefield of Primitive World to specially deal with superiors among the indigents of Primitive World. What? The entire body of the Half-Saint Evil Corpse was enveloped by a blood cloud and swept into the water. It thrust out its bone hands and began attacking the Half-Saint class warship again, trying to destroy the vessel defending formation. At that point, the Holy Light Grand Cannon had already condensed enough power. It shot out a bright light column toward the Half-Saint Evil Corpse. Boom! The two powerful forces crashed into each other. The light column struck through the Half-Saint Evil Corpse, breaking it into pieces. With a bang, chunks of carrion and bone flew out before turning into fine powder. Meanwhile, the second vessel defending formation of the warship had also been destroyed by the Half-Saint Evil Corpse's last strike. Most of the power had been neutralized by the vessel defending formation before its destruction. However, even just the fallout from the Half-Saint class attack was horrifying. Ordinary soldiers of the Primitive World could not withstand it. PFFT. Many soldiers of Primitive World of the Heaven Realm did not survive the destructive attack. Their bodies broke into pieces and their blood flowed out, mixing with the seawater that was pouring into the warship. In just a moment, the whole sea area had completely turned red, smelling strongly of blood. With a single strike, more than half of the soldiers of Primitive World were killed before their time, their corpses sinking to the bottom of the sea. It was extremely tragic. Nevertheless, there were also many who had survived and were swimming to the surface. Their hearts were pounding crazily. They were pale, chilled to the core, and panting for breath. They felt like they had just survived a holocaust. The Half-Saint class warship had been shattered by the blow of the Half-Saint Evil Corpse. Its dark steel hull sank while the wooden fragments floated on the sea. Zhang Yuochen leapt out of the water and landed on a piece of debris longer than 30 meters. He stood tall, looking very natural and graceful. His body was still clean, without a trace of water. He was soon followed by Huang Yanchen, Alxinian, and Orange Star Emissary. They flew out of the water in succession and landed behind Zhang Yuochen. Alxinian's face was pale as she said, "I didn't know how worthless my cultivation was until I witnessed the half-saint class attack." Orange Star Emissary smiled coldly. "If you don't become a saint, in the end, you're just an ant." Huang Yanjin shuddered, saying, "Fortunately, the last attack of the half-saint warship killed a half-saint evil corpse. Otherwise, all of us would have died." Alxinian frowned and said, "We don't know what dangers lie ahead. Without the protection of the half-saint class warship, we definitely can't reach Bloody Trench. I think we should go back to Holy Turtle Island first." Alxinian was not the only one who thought this way. After what they'd just been through, most of the surviving soldiers of Primitive World were afraid of the danger in this sea area. They did not dare move forward but instead wanted to return immediately to Holy Turtle Island. Although Xuanwu heritage only comes by chance and cannot be pursued, it was not more important than life. Zhang Yuochen's ear twitched, and he looked over the misty sea surface. With a solemn voice, he said, "If you want to go back it won't be easy. I think I hear something swimming toward us. There really is something wrong. The sea temperature is rising rapidly." Cautiously alert, Huang Yanchen stared at the surface of the water while mobilizing genuine qi and releasing the celestial body she held. The sea was getting hotter and hotter. Plumes of white water vapor began to rise, rumble. A moment later, the water began boiling, with bubbles popping up rapidly. A red shadow quickly swam through the water. With a swoosh, a strange fish over 10 meters long suddenly charged out of the water. Its mouth opened, revealing 2 rows of sharp teeth, and bit at the soldiers of Primitive World who were resting on a piece of warship debris. The strange fish had scarlet scales, a huge head, and sharp, sword-like teeth. It had a pair of long wings on its back. Each feather was like a flame, generating heat that could melt iron and steel. Like a fish, like a bird, like a beast. The pair of blazing wings was the very reason why the water was boiling as the creature swam. Seeing the huge mouth of the strange red fish, the 5 soldiers of Primitive World on the debris immediately drew out genuine martial arms to attack. Some used combat swords and some used heavy blades. However, the strange red fish had amazing defensive power. Even with 8th order genuine martial arms hitting its body, nothing penetrated its scales. A blazing wing fluttered to the side of a soldier of Primitive World who was at the dawn state of the heaven realm, causing a single spark to fall on him. CHCH. The soldier's body instantly ignited as he let out an ear-piercing scream. Just moments later, his body had turned into a mound of black ash. The 6th order genuine martial arms armor on his body turned into molten iron. With the exception of the combat sword, which was an 8th order genuine martial arms, the soldier of Primitive World in the heaven realm died without a trace, not even a bone left. This is a monster. Everybody, run. Once the flame makes contact, even the genuine martial arms will melt. The 4 other soldiers wanted to escape, but the strange red fish moved very quickly. Flying low, it caught up with them in a flash. By the time it was 33 meters away, their armors had become red hot. They were doomed. Just when they thought there was no escape, a sword radiance suddenly flew over their heads. PFFFF. The sword radiance drew a radian in the void space. Releasing incisive sword chi, it chopped at the neck of the strange red fish, creating a 33 centimeters cut. The strange red fish screeched. With its huge pair of eyes, it looked over at Zhang Yuochen who was controlling the flying sword. A mere human had actually dared to hurt it. Enraged, the strange red fish ignored the 4 soldiers of Primitive World and instead flew toward Zhang Yuochen with its blazing wings. The ancient abyss sword actually failed to cut off its neck. That means its defensive power is greater than that of the red cloud python. Zhang Yuochen stood straight on the warship debris. He placed one hand at his back and acted out a sword skill with the other. He mobilized the ancient abyss sword across the void space and thrust it at the wound of the fish. No matter how strong its defensive power was, it would not be able to withstand the ancient abyss sword. Swoosh. He stabbed the ancient abyss sword into the body of the strange red fish, cutting the main artery in its neck. With blood gushing out, the fish flew back and suspended over Zhang Yuochen's head. It fell on the water surface and croaked. After struggling for a while, the flame on its wings was gradually extinguished. The four soldiers of primitive world looked at the floating corpse and at Zhang Yuochen, who stood nearby. After confirming that the strange red fish was dead, they were finally relieved. "Thank you, Child Zhang." The four soldiers hurriedly bowed down to Zhang Yuochen in gratitude. Their hearts were filled with conviction. Even though they were all equal in cultivation in the heaven realm, Zhang Yuochen was much more powerful than they. Without much exertion, he had killed the fish with 2 strokes. He really deserved to be number 1 on the heaven board. Zhang Yuochen nodded slightly and then rode the wind power of the sea, flying lightly. He descended beside the fish, setting down his feet and stepping on the water. A circle of ripples broke out around his feet. He stared at the corpse and sized it up carefully, talking to himself. "It really is a humanoid fish.